Hey, hello, welcome to Dracula's Place, this channel where
Hey.
we enjoy talking about Dracula, and I'm very excited this week because we have a newcomer to this wonderful conversations about Dracula and vampires. So let me introduce first Magda. How are you,
Hey,
Magda?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Everything is good. I'm excited to be here again.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, we'll have a wonderful time. And I will let Yuri take control of the conversation because this time he has a very important guest to introduce. So Yuri, please introduce this wonderful guest that you have for us.
My guest over here is Diego Paleólogo. He's a teacher, a professor, and a researcher in Universidade do Estado do Rio de Janeiro, or
Wow.
State University of Rio de Janeiro.
Wow.
And he is a fellow researcher of vampires, Dracula, horror, and all of these weird and strange things that we so much love over here. Uh, Diego, I think we could start just for with you talking a little bit about your doctoral thesis that was when you were doing it that we met. We became exchanging this relationship and these researches in that period, and it's a very interesting one. The name is Máquina de Fabricar Vampiros: Tecnologias da Morte, do Sexo e do Sangue. In English, I would say that it's something like machines that fabricate vampires, technologies of death, sex, and blood. But Diego, feel free to use another translation if you want, uh, because you are the artist behind the work.
Well, first, thanks, uh, you guys, for having me. I'm very happy to be here and very glad, and I hope um, I can come back anytime in
Yes.
other occasions. Yeah, and thanks, Yuri, for also inviting me. It's very, um I feel very happy to be here to share these experiences and talking about vampires and Dracula. That I think these passions, this strange passion, unite us in a way. So it's very. I can't find another word besides happy, but okay. And also, I'm sorry for my English; it's a little bit rusty, but I'll do my best.
Don't
So,
worry. Don't worry about
okay.
it.
Don't worry
Um,
about it because my English is awful. So don't worry. You're very welcome, and thank
That's
you
not
for giving us
true
this time.
either. It's so not
okay.
true, both of you. Stop it.
Okay. So I think we can uh, start talking about this work. That it's the translation. It would be something very similar to the one you just did. The machine that fabricates vampires,
Yeah.
technologies of death, of blood, and of sex. Maybe machine could be also thought as a dispositive in this, the Foucaultian dispositive, but I think machine works better. Uh, it is a work. My doctorate was about vampires, and I love vampires and horror movies, and well, that's my field of research: pop
Yeah.
culture and horror. So, in this work, I dedicated my research to vampires. And when you start talking about vampires, well, I covered some part of Gothic literature during the 18th century and 19th century, and how the vampire figure, it became somewhat of a cultural um, personification of anxieties and fears, and whatever is brooding uh, beneath the surface of our cultural experiences. Also, this is also from Nina Auerbach. I don't know if, yeah, Our Vampires Ourselves. That she says that she writes that every epoch has its own vampire. Is my audio okay? Is it?
Yeah,
You guys are-
yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, uh, from my thesis, from my work, I wrote something that it's more contemporary, more now.
Yeah.
That I think we can go from here. I don't mind if I hope you don't mind if I read. It's very
No, don't
short.
worry, don't worry.
Um, Enrique asked me what inspires me what I like in vampires and in Dracula, and I think it's disruptive potencies. Um, in the book, in the romance, in the novel Dracula, and also in the products that came after Dracula.
Yeah.
I think Dracula left its legacies. So okay. As we have learned over the last 2 or 3 centuries, is that vampires are nomad figures, nomad in the context used by Rosi Braidotti. They are undomesticated creatures that, more often than not, do not respond to desires of domestication. Even if we take the Twilight Saga, and I'm sorry for bringing the Twilight Saga here,
Don't
but
they?
It's going to crash the transmission.
Don't be sorry. I meant there is definitely too much noise around this saga, and in fact, they are very important right now.
Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry. It's another child of Dracula, definitely.
yeah, yeah, in a way.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
flamboyant child of Dracula, I may say.
Like
And-
the bets that every vampire is gonna start shining in the sun from in the next years. It's a bet that Magda does, and I hope in my heart that Magda is terrifically wrong because
No,
I can't
that's
bear
not
this idea.
true. What are you talking about? I never said that. I only said that it's quite justifiable that they do. Why not? It's the 21st century. They are allowed to. But well, you just interrupted rudely Diego's lecture
No,
here.
no,
So
no, no problem. I think when I first saw and read the Twilight Saga, because I had to, because of my,
You were forced.
I was forced to, yeah, you know.
good.
I couldn't understand why they shone, why they scintillated. Well, and then I started thinking, well, they are vampires, as you said, of the 21st century, and as also Enrique and Yuri were saying, this relation, this very intimate relation with technologies.
Yeah.
So now they are like this Teflon skin, and also it makes sense somehow if we think about this relation with new technologies and new surfaces of technologies that they shine in the sun because I don't know.
I can see like an Instagram vampire, right?
Yeah, like an Instagram vampire or like
You mean with the filters?
Yeah, with filters because it's supposed that they cannot be take any kind of picture or whatever.
yeah.
Oh, goodness
They
me,
can
you
appear in
guys, you
pictures.
just take it as they are. Do we not question why Nosferatu died in the sun in the first place? No, it's obvious. It's perfectly all right for Nosferatu to die in the sun, but it's
Yeah.
not all right for Edward Cullen to shine. What's that?
You're probably right, Magda, because I mean, Nosferatu was a very responsive for the copyright issue of Dracula. But I'm kind of lost with this new saga and why they shine. But definitely they are related with Nosferatu and this something, you know.
Really? You said it, Enrique. Enrique has just said that Edward Cullen is related to Nosferatu. Bravo.
Also,
Yeah, he's like the black sheep of the family.
Yeah,
Edward Cullen.
Sorry, Diego, you can continue.
And he choked on it as well, on this thesis.
I have a student that she's researching why these products that are made written for a for female spectators or readers.
Yeah, it's a chick flick. It's a chick flick.
A chick flick, but they are over criticized, you know.
Mm-hmm.
As well,
I do know.
Yeah.
Was there?
So I started thinking about the Twilight Saga in another angle, and it's been like 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, so it's that
brand new thought.
Brand new thought, exactly. But that's not the point here. So even if you take the Twilight Saga, its end, its finale, is met with 2 other movies, with 2 other stories or the movies about vampires. Let the Right One In and Only Lovers Left Alive. It's part of Jim Jarmusch's take on monsters at the end of the world. And this is another very interesting point. The monsters at the end of the world, or as I will bring further on. Dracula flirts wildly with some kind of Oscar Wilde's sensibility. It is erotic and decadent, perverse and delirious, demonic and luxurious. These forces are not in battle, they are not in opposition. They are combined in order to produce the effect and affection of the vampire. I believe that those forces, what I'm calling forces, but we could find other names, are part of Dracula's legacies for contemporary vampires. And now, more than ever, vampires are faced, and other monsters are faced with a new threat. I don't think if it's a new threat, but okay. It's the end of the human race, or the end of the Anthropocene, as you wish. Yeah. So, what will those monsters, vampires, how will they survive in our imaginary and also in narratives and movies and stuff? So now maybe the important question concerning Dracula and subsequent monstrosities is how they will survive. And sorry, go on.
I'm sorry. I thought you were posing the question.
Yeah, I'm bringing. Yeah, I'm posing the question, and it's just I'm finishing, I'm ending, and we can. Yeah. It's really short.
No, sorry, you can continue. I thought it was this question that you were posing in the end to create the suspense.
No, it's almost. But what or who are the vampires of this time, of the 2021?
Yeah.
Political vampires, eco-friendly vampires, or vampires concerned with their death in death, as in that movie Daybreakers. I don't know if you know that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Of course.
Ethan Hawke.
Huh?
It was from Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke and Sam Neill. Yeah. Exactly. And Dracula and its metaphors are not so far behind us as we think. Yeah. Gender and sexuality issues were one of the aesthetical choices Stoker made to produce a stranger feeling in the book. Jonathan Harker falls in the archetypical structures destined to women in Gothic novels. Nina Harker, on the other hand, is almost a cyborg, surrounded by new technologies that becomes part of her body. She's also a kind of monstrosity, and that is why she can somehow produce a strange connection with the vampire. So this is, I mean, a very reduced themes that appears in my work, and what I thought about bringing for our conversation. So I hope this is it's really, really great to be talking with people that I know. I say the name of a movie or a book, and of course I know, yeah, that's it. About vampires, because, well, so I hope this will enrich and
produce
a very dense conversation.
Yes, it brings a very interesting material for us. The first thing I would like to ask you, and afterwards I will pose the same question to Enrique and Magda, is one question that your counselor asked me when I was defending my master's degree. She asked me what, in my opinion, was the representation, the best representation of the contemporary vampire.
Mm.
Which film could representate the contemporary vampire in the best way? And my answer was Only Lovers Left Alive. In my opinion, this is the best representation that we have of a vampire nowadays. And I would like to know your opinions, and why do you think?
Well,
That's that question to Diego, yes?
That's with Diego, but then you two can answer.
yeah, I think Magda, Enrique, if you'd like to, I confess that I would have to think, because I don't think Only Lovers Left Alive. I love that movie, but I don't think now it's the movie that.
How about you, Magda? I'm thinking in all these narratives that present contemporary vampires. I'm thinking on 30 Days of Night. These vampires that live in Alaska. The other one is Let the Right One In. I really love that film. Both versions. Which other? Underworld is another kind of contemporary vampires, and that is a derivative from vampire, the game, the role playing game. Which
The Masquerade. No.
What other narrative do we have with contemporary vampires?
Oh, are we talking cinema or TV as well?
Cinema.
I think TV as well. Yeah.
Because there is really plenty. So if I, that's actually, well, I can't say my favorite subject, but it's the subject that I've been working on for quite a long time. So I can probably talk for hours. So stop me when you begin to fall asleep. But I have to first of all agree with Yuri, but again, it's a very personal answer, because I absolutely adore Only Lovers Left Alive, and for very many reasons, and I'm going to talk about it again. And you were jokingly saying that I'm the defender of Twilight. I probably am. That's true to some extent. Although I never claimed that all the vampires should be shining forever. I just was defending the fact that the changing times bring inevitable changes within the characters, also in Gothic fiction, in horror, and in any genre that we can think of. So it's not without a reason that all of the sudden, after following, let's say, what started at the end of the 20th century, even the 1992 Dracula version by Coppola, where we had this partly humanized vampire, disguised vampire, Dracula, more and more narratives were appearing when this vampire was completely different. So it was just a sign of changing times, new generations. Twilight, if we're talking about Twilight, was directed at a very young target, very young audience. And then I can't fail but notice, Diego, that you're wearing a Sunnydale t-shirt. And of course, this is something that was very influential as well. And when you think about Angel, who also is very often quoted as a character before Edward Cullen.
Yeah.
And I know that the story is a little bit different, there's a curse and all that, but it's the beginning, and these vampires are definitely begin to evolve into being humanized. So the new generation started to yearn for something different, a different kind of fright. It's not even a fright anymore, is it? It's a romanticized myth, which has its root in Dracula, we want it or not. So in a way, yes, you were right, although you choked on your thesis, Enrique, that Edward Cullen is the son of Dracula as well. And I think it's correct. It's just the new version. And there is a lot of narratives, like, for instance, Vampire Diaries on TV, and even Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and many others. Which True Blood, yes, as well, of course, and presenting this new kind of character, even though the vampires don't shine at all. So Edward was the only one. Well, the whole Cullen family was the only one. But yes, I'm trying to get to this Only Lovers Left Alive, and nobody's laughing at Only Lovers Left Alive, because this is directed right away to grown-ups. This touches on art, it touches on everything that Dracula was there for. He was admiring science, he was very versed in languages and culture, he was interested in learning, and now we have the vampires, two vampires, as you said, at the end of the world. I don't know if it's literally or not, but it's definitely the 21st century, and they are still very much dwelling in art and knowledge in general. If you remember, the character of Marlowe, who is also a vampire, is mentioned, not for the first time in the vampire history, by the way, and it's something that we as adults can identify with more than with the Shining Edward, because Shining Edward, instead, despite the fact that he's 108 years old, he's a teenager, and Jarmusch's vampires are not. So these are grown-up, well-educated creatures that they know what they want, and they are very moral as well. So the morality changed. They don't want to kill. They don't want to be cruel for no reason, the main characters, because again, we have the opposition in the film, as we usually do in these films. So the old school vampire versus this new model. I think that this touches something in the 21st century viewer, who's, especially if you know the whole history of the vampires.
Yeah. This is interesting because I can see two different paths in this ramification of the vampire mythos, because we have in one side the young vampire mythos, no, which I will bring this movie. I believe it's a quintessential young vampires. No, this is very pop culture thing, and very. I don't know, this young that want to be forever. But on the other hand, we have this other narrative of this very introspective vampirism, which can be related with Lewis of
Interview with the Vampire.
Interview with the Vampire. So, and this is very interesting because somehow in this new shiny saga, in somehow we have this introspective characters, but very related with the pop culture and with the jungling things, you know.
Also, the hunger.
Yes, of course.
And Catherine Deneuve. It's also. I was thinking about Interview with the Vampire, and now with the Lost Boys and the Hunger. I think these three movies, these characters, these new ways of representation, with Only Lovers Left Alive in the right one, I think they are somehow a 21st century vampire that migrates from the 90s, the end of the 20th century, to the 21st century. So they still have these disruptive potencies, these introspective ways of going around the world, and you see, and with the morality. But in these movies, the morality is not as crystallized as in Twilight. In Lost Boys, The Hunger, Interview with the Vampire, Only Lovers Left Alive, and the right one in, morality also changes with what they need to do to survive, and how they want to survive, and how they want to be in the world. There's also the other movie from Catherine Bigelow,
Yeah.
Near Dark.
Near Dark, yeah.
Yeah.
But Near Dark is also its end. It's really I don't know. It's
Blood transfusion.
yeah. I think it's kind of sad because I don't know everything that was almost promised in the vampire world. It's I don't know. It's ended with the blood transfusion and the father to the son and everything else. The new families, the new organizations towards families and social groups and minorities are like, okay, that's really, really bad. You don't want to go out with those people. So let's restore order. That it's also the end of Dracula, the end of the novel Dracula, that order is restored. And I was with Dracula here because I think the end, well, I think Mina finds her writings in a vault or something, and it's all. I think it doesn't turn to dust, but it's a lot of writings that she cannot comprehend what it is, and it's a confusion. I'll try to find, but it's also like almost as if it had never happened. When order is restored, when nuclear family comes in place, all the other potencies and disruptivenesses of the vampire and its promises of, I don't know, they are out of the picture. So I'll try to find it here.
Oh, all right. That's interesting. So while you're looking for it, it's interesting because, well, again, this Twilight jumps to mind right away because we have the story of one family, and because it's shining, and because it's a teenager falling in love with a human, and all that, and I can just enumerate a lot of things that people are
Don't forget the baseball.
Sorry.
Don't forget the baseball.
And the baseball and everything that people are infuriated with. They are just don't forget, because people always do forget that this is just one family, and it's very clear at the very start that they are put as a contrast to all the rest of the vampire world. They are weird. They have this family that wants to live in a different way, and we have on the other hand we have the Volturi, which is considered normal vampirism, and this is how the world functions, vampire world functions. So we have one family which is an example from it. And that's very clear from the start.
They are the Adams family of the vampires.
But in reverse.
In reverse.
So that's, again, so in the world, so even though this order that you're talking about is restored in a way because the vampire gets a girl and the child is being born and so on, and another thing that people are raving about, a child was born in the vampire family, but the world all the other vampires function as they did for centuries in this universe, only that we don't see it. Because we are following this one family.
This aspect of the vampire as a morality disruptive character is very interesting, and it's very clear in Dracula. And there's one scene in Dracula's Coppola actually that I think it's very emblematic. I don't remember if it's a scene that we have in the book as well, but in the movie it's very emblematic because of the imagetic aspect. That is Mina yelling unholy.
Oh yeah.
And,
it is not in the book.
Unclean, right?
Unclean, yes, unclean. And this is a very emblematic image for me about this aspect of the morality of the that we have in the vampire narrative, because especially in Coppola's movie, because in Coppola's movie, actually Nina is in love with Dracula. They have a romantic aspect over there. In theory, it's like the best world. They are together now forever and ever. But the fact that she is a vampire, all this disruptive character, makes her somehow unclean, and all of the morality is implied over there. Even when you change the narrative, instead of being a rapist narrative, it starts to be a romantic narrative. Even in this way, you have this morality aspect over there.
And the morality is quite a theme in Dracula because of the connection with religions, and when Mina is turned into a vampire, she became part of the devil, and that is why she is unclean
Yeah.
in the novel. That is why she doesn't belong in heaven, and she's not purified, and that is why she keeps the mark in the forehead.
I found nothing but a mess, nothing but a mass of typewriting. That is what all the story is reduced to. This is the very end of Dracula.
Yeah,
And okay, yeah.
Yes, the we maintain the stability and the order in the end.
yeah, yeah,
Despite the adventures that we have of any normative disruption, we have our morality established in the English way
yeah.
all over again.
Yeah, because Mina fulfills her role as a Victorian woman, right? She becomes a mother and a spouse, so everything's okay with them. Because yeah,
At the
Yeah,
end,
in the end is the normality of the Victorian era, no? And we have even a child from
yeah,
I mean, we have the whole family traveling together, no, sightseeing. Oh, look at there. This is where we kill the count, no, like taking pictures and that kind of stuff, no.
and I was also thinking about Dracula. You were saying in Buffy. Do you remember?
Oh,
Well,
no.
yeah, she
ah,
fights Dracula, but she's very excited to fight Dracula because it's a famous vampire. So
Oh, of course, yes, there is such a thing, and
yeah,
she doesn't succeed too. So
Wow.
yeah, I
Dracula
mean,
stays
Dracula,
alive forever.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
He escapes, even though she's perfect, very good in her job, isn't she? Yes, I do
Yeah,
remember that. It's fantastic. That was really. It made me smile because she was able to kill all sorts of vampires on her way, and then Dracula turns up and he manages to escape,
yeah,
even though she was doing her thing.
yeah,
That's great. It would be very sad if they killed Dracula
yeah, yeah,
after all this time.
exactly. Yeah, she's
yeah,
the lady,
we,
but she's not. I mean, she would kill her own story if she killed Dracula in a meta
Yeah.
Yeah.
something. Yeah,
yeah, the killing of Dracula is always a problematic part, right? Because especially because when you enumerate how difficult it is to kill that being, and then you just chop his head and he's dead. Well,
Yeah.
Or just
it's
put a
kind of
stake,
easy in the end.
With a knife. With a
or
knife.
put a
With a knife,
stake in
yes.
his heart.
Yeah,
And that's done.
all the mythos went to the window because if you can heal it with a simple knife.
Yes, it is. A guillotine is more effective than a knife. So you had lots of people dying in guillotine that were more resistant than Dracula in the end. It's
But
kind of
but in the other on the other hand, now that you mention it, Jonathan Harker actually hurt the can with a simple shovel when he hits in the castle, and he managed to make like a wound in his face. But you're right. It's like I can bet that opens the speculation of Dracula is dead for real, because as we know, Van Helsing told us that he needed to cut the face and stake the heart, and that kind of ritualistic kind of end that we didn't finally get.
Yes, this speculation is interesting of Dracula not being actually dead in the end of the book. And it's a speculation that was very well used in cinema, especially in the Hammer productions. In the Hammer productions, Dracula's
And in the comics,
ever after immortal. It doesn't matter what you do with Dracula, he will come back anyway.
He comes back after you.
Yeah.
Do you remember the 1979 with Frank Langella film
yeah,
and the way the film ends?
yeah.
That was always very.
Actually, that was the only one very relatable with the killing in the novel. I mean, it has a lot of differences because he was killed in a ship, but he was like going into dust. More likely like the Claudia in the vampire saga also.
I like this Frank Langella movie because there are these aspects in the end linking to Twilight. It's probably where it all started because it's the first great romantic vampire that we have in movies.
Yeah,
and the disco one as well.
yeah.
Sorry?
And
The
a disco.
disco one, I'm saying.
He was
The
very
disco.
disco, yeah, and he used the same John Travolta attire.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was very 80s, and you had all this music, and that was wonderfully a timepiece, a costume piece, let's say.
There's a scene of Dracula in this movie in a horse. It's a very beautiful scene. He's a shiny knight coming to rescue.
And the
Slow
hairstyle,
motion,
wow.
in slow motion.
Yes.
Yeah, but actually, it's one of the scariest because in that part, Lucy. Wow, man! It's the representation of Lucy is wow one of the scariest vampires I've ever seen.
I've always seen the Langella movie as a very romantic movie. I don't know. I couldn't see it as a very scary movie. I think Coppola is a romantic movie, but I think it's scarier in my opinion.
Yeah.
I couldn't really be scared with all this music and stroboscope lights all around, and I constantly had the impression that I'm just attending a school disco, which was great feeling, by the way. I'm not criticizing it, but it was not especially scary to me. I just loved the representation, as
We
I
just
say.
found the relations of the disco ball and the shininess of the Twilight Saga.
There you go. That's the start. It's now official. So now we know how it started.
So instead of criticizing Twilight, we can see that Twilight has a very detailed research on cinematic vampires to come over with that idea.
Starting with the attempt to defy Nosferatu's death in 1922.
Yes, very disruptive in this matter.
Twilight definitely is another branch in this huge tree of narratives related with Dracula. I mean, Twilight is, as you well said, it's a contemporary tale for a specific audience. I mean, I really don't like it at all. I saw the first movie and I really hated it from start to finish. But I can understand its place into culture, into media, into this because it attracts a lot of girls who has this appealing with the Gothic. I mean, in the 90s we have this horror Gothic dolls. No, I don't remember the name, but it was like a very childish representation of the vampirism, and I can bet those girls who actually collect those kind of mainstream dolls can be relatable with a Twilight Saga because it's a romance. It's the girl who managed to attract a supernatural being I mean, I can understand its place. I hate it, but I can understand it.
You have just admitted to the whole world that you're an old man, Enrique.
Definitely, definitely. I'm almost 50, so I'm there.
Oh, I wasn't fishing for a confession of your age.
Yeah,
But
it's
it's just because I read something that really stuck with me it wasn't even a defense. It was just an attempt to analyze all this situation with the Twilight and why so many people hate it so much. And the researcher, and I forgot the name, I'm sorry, but that was a woman, and I remember that she said such something very clever and something that spoke to me. That when we are railing against Twilight or shiny vampires, we're railing against another generation's Gothic. And that's something that we no longer can understand, and it's just changed in the meantime. So it's another generation, and it speaks to the youngsters. So yeah, I absolutely love Twilight, and I'm going to be forever young because of that.
I will rewatch Twilight because I was also thinking that Twilight lends or offers a fantasy about real and durable affection in a time where everything's dissolving, like Bauman and liquid stuff all over, and and Twilight is like a real and eternal romance.
Yeah.
So this is like very appealing. There's a kind of lure there that it's also okay. Everything is dissolving, and the world is ending, and everything's falling apart. But okay, I have a relationship that it's not falling apart. That it's and that this is some kind of as you were saying, the Gothic promises during like almost 200 for sure, almost 300 years of Gothic literature. That is somehow the promise of the Gothic atmosphere that something remains.
Something is an immortal romance.
Yeah, and we don't know if it's good or bad, or if it's dead or alive, and it doesn't really matter because something always remains from worlds that were destroyed
and another interesting thing that came to my mind about Twilight again. Funny that we're focusing on that today. And by the way, I read Twilight as a grown-up, and I'm laughing. Well, it's not something that I read every day, but but I definitely enjoyed it for the very reasons we were talking about, because it was something new and something that I knew is going to be speaking to, especially to teenage girls. So I enjoyed reading it because it was something fresh at that time, even though it was very naive and so on. But this aside. Yeah, because there is this story of this. You're talking about things that are passing by and disappear in culture, and if you remember, or if you don't remember, I'm going to remind you that Bella, the main heroine, this teenage girl, the average teenage girl, awkward and so on. She wasn't very beautiful. She wasn't special. That's another thing that attracted young readers as well. And she was sniggering at the thought, because Edward Cullen, the vampire, wanted to marry her, and she was close to 18 or something, and she was sniggering at the idea of marriage. So that there was a vampire who represented an old school traditional belief in what's moral, what's proper. And by the way, we have Stephanie Meyer, the author of Twilight, who's a Mormon herself. So this morality is very very easily understandable if you read it into the context. And then at the end, the girl becomes the wife, and this is something she was never even considered.
It is interesting. I was going to say something in this way because when the first time I met Diego was in an event that he made in Rio de Janeiro called Nights with Vampires. And he invited a few lecturers to talk about vampires. And I remember that was this one lecture that I can't remember his name, but I remember there was this one person over there, and he was talking about Twilight, and people were asking questions for him, and he said Twilight is not a vampire novel. Twilight is a Mormon novel metaphorized with the image of the vampire. So we don't have a vampire over here. This is what makes people so angry and difficult to understand, because you're not thinking about a vampire novel. You're thinking about a Mormon novel that uses the figure of the vampire as a pop cultural aspect of selling books. And it was a very interesting thing that I listened over there, and opened a bit of my eyes to Twilight. And one thing that now we were talking, I could identify, is that when we get Dracula, that is the greatest vampire book ever written, the most famous, at least we can say the most famous, and the one that is the basis of all the vampire imagery in pop culture. We have the vampire, as Diego says, disruptive figure. And in the end, for us to maintain order, the vampire needs to be extinguished. So you need to kill the vampire for us to maintain order. And Twilight makes the opposite aspect. You have a contemporary novel that the vampire is the person who's maintaining this morality and this order. So it's very interesting, this paradox that we have, this parallel between two views over there, and how Twilight changes this. The vampire is not a disruptive figure anymore in Twilight. Is a morality figure. Is the person who's going to maintain the morality in times that morality is not being maintained. We are living crazy times for the traditional and moralized people over there that the world is going crazy. Yes.
Agreed. And another example is again from this century, the Vampire Diaries.
Yes.
And what I'm forever mystified by this is the same story actually, but there are a group of young, teenage female vampires, and they just became vampires, but they are doing everything to become human. I mean, to remain human. Even though they are vampires, and they are very happy in being vampires as well, but they are constantly preparing Thanksgiving, going around the laundry, and I don't know, preparing to some fair and festivity in the town. So this is not the kind of things that you associate with. Well, Dracula would probably not be running around with a basket full of laundry.
You know, he make the bed of Jonathan Harker, so and he cooked the meal, so I can bet he's doing laundry right now.
All right, maybe, but for
I
some
think
reason
Dracula
it's
has
not
servants.
the image
I can't imagine him doing all this. I imagine he has servants.
Yeah, in the translation of in the Icelandic translation, there are several occupants of the castle, and there is a muted old lady who happens to be the helper of Dracula.
Mhm.
Oh, this is
But again, this is not really the image that pops into your mind when you think Dracula. Oh, this is the guy who was running around and doing laundry on everyday basis. So that's what I'm talking about. That it becomes a norm, as Yuri said, very nicely put. Yuri, I liked what you said. It's a reversed world now. It's a reversed order.
It's a reversed world.
In this sense, I think that one very interesting example, I don't remember if it was Magda or Diego who gave this example. One very interesting example of a narrative. Of course, I don't remember the end of the series, but I think that is very interesting in this aspect is True Blood, because True Blood in this aspect of being a narrative about vampires, it is, we are disruptive and we have these issues, and it's like this, and the problem is not that we are disruptive, is about people that are not accepting that we are disruptive, and the whole saga is more or less based on this aspect. I don't remember the last chapter. Maybe in the last chapter they have this morality all over again. I don't remember, but the whole series had this theme, and I think it was very interesting and though very transgressive vampire narrative that we had in that moment.
Yeah, True Blood, as almost every HBO fantasy, it begins with a promise of something new and disruptive, and it ends with the conservative and the end of all these promises. As Game of Thrones and True Blood, also it ends with it will stay the same. True Blood ends with again the nuclear family being restructured, right?
I remember the last episode is a very shining episode. I just don't remember what happened, but I think it's in the sun, something like this.
There you go. We're getting back to shiny.
Back to the disco
No
ball.
escape.
This was an accident, actually.
It's in your subconscious mind.
Yeah, it shines.
I found here the go back to the coffins, or the machine of killing vampires. Heteronormativity, heteronormative, and monstrosities at the end of True Blood. I think that it's exactly what happens. I mean, except for Pam and the blonde guy, I forgot his name.
Eric.
Eric, yeah.
Come on.
Come on.
Pam is my spirit animal, so
Yeah.
Everything goes back to some kind of normality at the end of True Blood. And that is, if we read vampire productions through political lens, we can always find relations. There is a site that says in the US, when the Democratic Party is, when the president is a Democrat, you have more vampire movies. When the president is a Republican, you have more zombies movies.
Wow.
And it's really because vampires, as I understand them, they are very political. As Yuri said, I don't know if it's a Mormon novel or not, but what I know is that if it's a Mormon novel that uses vampire, then every other vampire book, it's some other thing that uses vampires, because Carmilla is a lesbian novel, probably the first lesbian novel from in the
18.
And Dracula and 1875, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Dracula is actually the only true vampire novel.
What?
Dracula is the only true vampire novel. In that sense.
What do you mean? Elaborate, Enrique.
No, but the Diego was telling us that each narrative of the vampire are not vampire per se, because he was talking about Carmilla being a lesbian narrative using vampirism. But in that way of thinking, I'm trying to come up with Dracula's a truly vampirism tale. Or what do you think about Dracula, Diego?
How much time do you have?
I love Dracula, but I also think I think everything we're saying is vampire novels and movies, but they have so many layers that we can read into it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think of Dracula as a as I said, I mean, Bram Stoker was very close to Henry Irving and to Oscar Wilde. So some major issues of morality and sexualities are in Dracula. And maybe they are so together that we cannot separate those issues, because those issues make the vampire, everything, the fears and the anxieties and the desires, and they are Dracula, and they are, what makes Dracula probably the most authentic vampire narrative, and the one that is surviving the most, because before Dracula we have Carmilla, and we can also read why Carmilla is not as much popular as Dracula, and we can also read into misogyny and and LGBT phobia and all this stuff. But before Carmilla we have Varney the Vampire, I think, and also The Vampire from John Polidori, and the first, So Dracula is all of this together, in my opinion. So it's sexuality, and it's politics, and it's vampires, and I don't know if I answered the question, but I love the book, because it's not even that well written, but it's a great book. It's a great story. Because of all that, because it has.
We actually already discussed in previous weeks about the merits of the novel. I was telling them that in my perspective, it's a flawed novel, because it is not very well written for me. But at the same time is the most important narrative, because now that you mentioned why Carmilla isn't that famous as Dracula, and my answer will always be the same: transmedia. as Dracula was related into other media, and Bram Stoker was very obsessive, pursuing copywriting issues and trying to publishing in different countries and in different medias. That is why Dracula, for me, it's still going on, because nowadays that it doesn't have copyrights, anyone can do anything with Dracula. So it's a very living narrative, because now it's a mouth to mouth. We can use Dracula as a mythos nowadays, because of this openness of the transmediatic quality of Dracula.
But this idea of transmedia, I would love to hear more about it, because I think it's very. Dracula also, its intimacy with new technologies. Mina, for me, Mina is like a cyborg, because she uses the typewriter and the phonograph, and there is also the photographic camera. If you've seen
a Kodak camera.
A Kodak, yeah, exactly. And in the manuscript of Bram Stoker, he asks, will the vampire appears? And I think it's really, he was thinking about technologies while writing Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Why are you saying that she's a cyborg? She's interesting.
I understand this idea of being a cyborg, because me and Diego, we love a text. We too love this text, and I think he's reading this through this perspective, that is Donna Haraway's perspective of a cyborg. Right. And for me, it makes total sense through Donna Haraway's perspective.
Oh, I see.
Exactly a cyborg.
It's very steampunk. It's steampunk.
Yeah, steampunk, exactly.
It's a very steampunk notion.
Technology definitely is a big part of Dracula. That is true. Yeah. And obviously, Mina. No one else but Mina is a mistress and master of it.
Yeah.
And she claims herself as a modern woman, no? And in several times.
Oh, she definitely is.
Yeah.
Isn't she?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I have to
As
object
modern as she could
severely
be.
here. Yes, that is true. About Mina now, but I have to make one very strong objection because against what Yuri is trying to imply over and over again, it's not that Twilight is, in my opinion, the best novel in the world. It's far from it. I'm defending the idea of something contemporary being present, and it has the right to be around and be present. But I absolutely adore Dracula, and I think that Bram Stoker's Dracula is the best novel ever written. And in fact, I adore the language. I think it's a masterpiece in linguistic side as well. So.
I'm with you, Magda.
So Enrique, if you're proclaiming that it's not well written, I'm going to have to fight you with my fist.
No. Actually, that is what it makes it the best novel ever written. The flawlessness of it is one of the, yeah, for me is the best book out there, without any question.
Yeah, I'm with Magda in this. I think that the stylistic aspect of Dracula is impressive. Is something that makes it a masterpiece because we have a vampire narrative, but it's not the only vampire narrative. It's not the first vampire narrative. But we have the way that it's put together over there is incredible. And one thing that we talked in the last time as well that I think impacts is the way that Bram Stoker got all of the Gothic elements and put together in one part of the book, because I think his book is divided in two parts. One part is the Gothic book part of the book, that is Castle Dracula.
Yeah.
He got all of the Gothic, and he got in a very impressive way. I think it's the best Gothic work ever.
Yeah.
And Castle Dracula is an impressive, horrifying part of the book. And he has a very Gothic part of the book over there. And afterwards, he has a very technological and scientific part of the book. And I think this is really interesting in a stylistic aspect over there of how he structured his book in this way, because in this way I totally agree with Magda. Not about Twilight, we are going to continue fighting about Twilight, but I agree with her about Dracula. I think that Dracula is not a great book. I think it's one of the greatest masterpieces that has presented. I think it's a genius book, and I think that Bram Stoker put all of his life's effort in this book.
Definitely.
In the transmediatic aspect that Enrique talks, and in the book as well, inside the book, because this is the interesting thing of Bram Stoker. He doesn't have any other book that is memorable like this. Even like we said that the Dracula's Guest, that is maybe part of the book, is not as interesting as Dracula. Dracula is, in my opinion, is a impressive masterpiece of literature.
Completely agree with you.
I think we are already running 1 hour over here of conversation, but there was one thing that we were talking about, the vampire archetype in the beginning, and one detail that Enrique talked that called my attention was when he started mentioning which vampire is the best contemporary image for him, and he talked about Underworld, and this came to my attention because when I was thinking about the vampire representation, the contemporary vampire representation, I was thinking in the aspect of thinking, how would a vampire be surviving nowadays? How would this vampire be? So this is the contemporary aspect that I was thinking about. And the whole thing, at least in my opinion, to think about this vampire is the time aspect. The time aspect is the overlasting period that a person has to mature his ideas and his views of the world, how would this person be? But on the other side, when we think about underworld, we think about the contemporary vampire of cinema, not as of cinema, like in the trending aspect of what cinema is nowadays.
Yeah.
That cinema nowadays, the great trending cinema is superheroes.
Yeah, definitely.
And Underworld is probably Underworld and Blade are probably Blade, especially because it's a comic book. But Underworld, maybe as a very hardcore vampire story, is the great point of representation in a franchise that we have in cinema of the hero vampire.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Underworld is a very interesting way of us thinking of the vampire over there in this contemporary culture. This is one thing that I think it's interesting for us to think about. And the other thing is what is happening with Dracula nowadays, because in my opinion, Dracula is having some difficult times in the last 10 years. We have the last Dracula we had, the less popular Dracula we had in cinema. I'm not talking about series, but the last popular Dracula we had on cinema was Dracula Untold. It's a terrible movie, but it's an important movie because it
very mainstream.
Yeah, it's very mainstream, but it's a movie that touches in interesting parts. And one thing, just speculating here very fast, I never thought about this earlier, but one thing that maybe is the problem with Dracula nowadays is that the aspects of the novels are not very popular in some characteristics of Dracula, like the rapist characteristic is not a very popular characteristic for us to put in cinema nowadays. And the romantic the romantic and the sexualized aspect of Dracula in a counterculture that we had in the 70s, it worked very well. But nowadays we have some debates about female objectification and other aspects over there that makes this sexualized aspect of Dracula as well maybe a little problematic in terms of popularity. So this are just speculations that I have now, that I'm thinking nowadays of these issues that Dracula is passing through in cinema.
Well,
what do you think?
If I may start, because if we're talking about the representation of sexual aspects in cinema, it's very simple reason from the very start, and it's censorship or just what was acceptable to show on screen, especially in the films that go to cinemas, because there are a lot of rubbish Dracula productions which are more brave in exposing them. There is even a porn version of Dracula. So it's been explored, but it's maybe not definitely not in the mainstream. And also there is this aspect which is going to probably be, I believe, that is going to be used forever because it's such a simple trick, really, that Bram Stoker introduced in the novel right away. The ability of vampire to mesmerize. So in a way, the victims were willing to subject to whatever he wanted. So can we talk about rape? If the victim is mesmerized. But of course it can be. It's on the direct interpretation of the thing. But of course it will be interpreted, and it should be interpreted as a kind of a cover for something much deeper, as the problem of sexuality. But I don't think it's it's easy, especially in Hollywood movies, where the censorship is not existing in theory, but is existing really in reality. So I don't think that you will see rape in a mainstream cinema, not in this century anyway, or maybe at the end. I don't know. We'll see. We need a time machine.
Yeah.
What do you think, guys?
Enrique, Diego, any comments?
Enrique, do you want to?
No, Diego, come on.
Well, as you were, I was thinking about Netflix Dracula,
Yes.
and um,
And
I,
are you going to criticize it?
well, no, I think it was very interesting. I don't know if I actually liked it. You know,
Yes, thank you.
I'm divided. I'm divided.
because it was. I think it was a very good actualization. Actualization. Um, yeah, of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
novel.
yeah.
Yeah. So I liked it, and I found myself. I liked it. Well, and also, um, it's not because it's true or whatever to the original, but it's because it's something rather new, you know, with the characters and with the and with Dracula, and you know, it's like sometimes I love a subversion of the original, you know, and I think this was a good subversion, a good profanity, you know, of the
Good profanity, I like it.
Profanity.
and Dracula, I think it's still undead in the pop culture, and it will be undead for centuries. Um, I was thinking about another movie. You said the Dracula Untold, and it follows a tendency of showing the other side of villains, you know, such as Wicked or Maleficent and other movies that shows the backstory or why they became. I just saw Cruella the other day and I loved it.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
No, me neither.
Yeah, but I mean, it's because this other side of villains, I think they are very appealing because nowadays everyone is asking why someone is bad. Well, some kind of evilness, you know. People ask why, what happened,
Mhm.
what something happened to this character, to this person that it became. Sometimes I like it, sometimes not, because I think some characters can be bad just because they are bad, and that's okay. So I don't like this Dracula Untold, but also we already have responses to this Dracula Untold, if we can call it that. Then Netflix Dracula
Yeah.
is a kind of response that I like. You know? So I think it's alive in pop culture, and I would love to see new products of Dracula, and how new generations will mold Dracula into
Yeah.
their contemporary desires and fears and anxieties. And
That is
Might
important
shine.
because if it's something that is very true to Dracula is that he managed to come back in one way or another into any kind of media. So we will definitely expect another version of Dracula, and hopefully one very relatable with the novel.
yeah,
Okay, guys. I think that Dracula Untold is going to be a tendency over here. Dracula as a superhero and Dracula as a good guy.
Yeah.
Let's wait until the next years to see what's going to happen. Uh, so that's it. It was great talking to you, Diego, and great talking to Enrique and Magda again. My Saturdays now are made of talking with you two, and it's been great. Thank you very much, Diego. Thank you for putting your.
Magda, really,
One final thought, Diego. Give us one final thought. I mean, you will be here. You will be here so many times, but for this time, give us one final thought about this.
I hope. Well, I hope I will be here again. It was really
Definitely.
nice. One final thought. I think it could be something like, well, uh, at the end of the world, we all, or some of us, will have to become monsters or vampires in that matter to survive.
No.
It's very optimistic.
No. What final thought, Magda,
Now it's my turn.
about the shiny vampires?
About the shiny vampires, I don't really want to talk about shiny vampires anymore. I've already stated my views, and again, it's because I can hear it myself that I come across as a big fan of Twilight and nothing else,
Yeah.
which is really far from the truth. Again, so my final thought of the day is that well, whether we allow it or not, really, so it's not even let's allow it, but we have to allow the new generation to present and offer something new and some sort of an evolution of the myth of the character of a vampire. So this Gothic keeps evolving, and it will be evolving whether we want it or not. So we need to just try, and I think that it's fun that we are trying to understand it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun as well. And there is a divided society, and there are so many people who are going to oppose it, and as many that are going to defend it as well. So it's wonderful.
But you know, guys, in the end, there is something beautiful about Twilight, and something good came out of Twilight, and it's that Edward Cullen is the new Batman, and that's the only thing good thing about Twilight.
The new Batman, you said?
Yes, he is the new Batman, Mag.
The new Batman, yeah.
Okay, talk me through it quickly.
No, it's a new Batman
the actor
movie.
is the new Batman movie is going to be with Robert Pattinson, and we
I
hope he's
missed
not
it
going to shine because
completely.
it's going to ruin some things.
Oh, I bet he's going to shine. Oh, that's he's going to shine.
Shine on, Edward. Shine on.
I didn't know that. I missed it completely. Sorry.
No, but it's going to be very. I mean, Dracula and Batman. It's very relatable his story, and we need to open another session for the Batman Dracula. But I mean.
And there is also a connection between Twilight, as we said last time, between Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey. So maybe there is going to be more sexuality in this new Batman as well. Shiny Batman and sexuality.
Yes.
Now I want to see it.
Thank you very much. I would just like to close with one thought over here that was based in this talk over here that we have. That the vampires, as Diego presented as a disruptive figure, was very important along our literature and mediums for us to have these narratives that are talking about these aspects. And I think the great question nowadays is, in a society that the disruptive character is becoming normality, what is going to be of the vampire nowadays? Because normality is already the normality of us is already starting to figure about these disruptive figures and the intrinsic subjectivity that everybody has. So in this new disconstructed world that we live, what are going to be the new metaphors that the vampire can present? And let's wait to see them. I think we had a great conversation. Thank you very much, Enrique. Thank you, Diego, for the participation, and thank you, Magda. Very talkative today.
Oh,
thank
sorry.
you very much. It was great. I love when you are like this.
Thank you for it. It's wonderful as always.
It was a wonderful conversation, guys. So see you next week, and
see you guys.
See you next week.
Bye, guys. See you next week.
Ciao.